Even if your boat has refrigeration, storing some of your vegetables outside the refrigerator helps considerably with the problem of, my refrigerator is just not large enough. And if you don't have a refrigerator, well, you have to store them otherwise. Hi, welcome to the Boat Galley Podcast. I'm Carolyn Shearlock, here with tips, reviews, and how-tos for your cruising adventure. This episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by GoSun.co, inventors of the world's fastest, most compact solar cookers for all your ship-to-shore culinary adventures. GoSun, using the power of the sun to fuel your galley life. Use coupon code GALLEY2018 to save 10% on any order through December of 2018. Slow down, slow down. The good news is that with a bit of care, many vegetables can be stored anywhere from a week to a month or sometimes even more outside the refrigerator. No, not everything will last that long, but enough will that you can still have some fresh veggies to mix in with the canned. Having veggies last for a reasonable amount of time without refrigeration actually begins with how you choose the vegetables in the first place. This is probably the most important part of the process and the one usually overlooked. I've learned my lesson the hard way. You simply can't go into the grocery store, walk to the produce section, grab the first thing you see, and be able to keep it for any length of time without refrigeration. A few simple principles to start with. First, buy never refrigerated vegetables. These are most often available at farmers markets or on veggie trucks. Once something has been refrigerated, it needs to stay refrigerated, or it will quickly go bad. My experience is that produce that's been refrigerated has less than half the life outside the refrigerator of something that has never been refrigerated. Later, when I talk of how long something will last, I'm talking about items that have never seen the inside of a refrigerator. Now, second, be very picky. Pick over individual items and don't accept any that are bruised, rotten, overripe, have insect holes, or look old. Only the freshest, most perfect vegetables will do for you. And don't buy too much. If you buy more than comfortably fit in your storage areas, your vegetables will get bruised as you try to fit the extras in. Be realistic about how much room you have. And finally, transport the vegetables gently. If you're carrying them in a backpack, bring along some towels to pad the veggies and don't try to cram them in. If you're going by cab, make sure nothing will fall on them and they won't roll around. You don't want to bruise them before they even get to the boat or home. To wash or not to wash. You will find cruisers bringing vegetables aboard who are adamantly in both camps. The argument for washing is to get any critters off before they cause damage or infest other food, and also to have food ready to use when you want it. The argument against it is that produce lasts longest with the least handling and left in the dirt it was pulled from. Both sides do have merit. In general, I wash my veggies whether I'm putting them into the refrigerator or into gear hammocks. Even at farmers markets, I've rarely found produce that hasn't been washed at least once, so it's not in its own dirt. But if you do wash it, you have to get it totally dry before storing it. Even in ventilated bins or gear hammocks, it won't totally dry if you put it in damp. It'll just start to rot. And as you put things away, I'll talk about this more in a minute, double check each item to make sure it's in good condition. I usually find an item or two that needs to be eaten right away, which can be worked into the dinner menu. Let's talk a bit about the storage basics. Storage areas need to be well ventilated, dry, and as dark as possible. Bins need to be something that can easily be washed. Plastic works the best as you can use bleach on it and it dries quickly. Wire baskets and gear hammocks can cause pressure points that will bruise, so they need to be well padded. And that said, gear hammocks are generally good for storing veggies only if they can be hung in locations where they won't bump into anything in rough seas, but just swing unencumbered. Additionally, the bins and other storage containers need to be located where you can see into them to check on the produce daily. If you see something that's bruised, put it on the dinner menu. Anything that you missed and is now rotting or molding needs to be thrown out immediately, and the container wiped out with bleach. In general, I don't store non-refrigerated produce in plastic bags. They simply trap any moisture and the food will rot. I've tried the green bags and had the same results. Now let's talk a little bit about storage specifics for different vegetables. Okay, fresh garlic. Don't put it in plastic. It'll last a month or more just out in the open. Onions. They like to be stored in a dark, dry area to keep them from sprouting. Don't store onions and potatoes together, as the potatoes will sprout. And for potatoes, well, just like I said, you don't want them with the onions. You want them in a dry place so they don't turn green. And you store both white potatoes and sweet potatoes exactly the same. For cabbage, keep it cool. Cabbage will last several weeks as long as you can protect it from bruising too much. Lettuce doesn't keep well, so cabbage becomes the salad staple for cruisers. Tomatoes. Buy them in varying stages of ripeness to greenness. Either store them in a dark place or wrap them with paper towels or newspaper or even stick them in tube socks. They need darkness to ripen. Unwrap them when ripe and then use them within a couple days. If you buy them in various stages, you can have a supply for 2 weeks or possibly even more. Avocados are pretty susceptible to bruising. The best that I found to store them was to put them in tube socks and then in a gear hammock on top of sturdy produce such as potatoes or onions. If you buy them in various stages of ripeness, with some of them still just rock hard, you can enjoy them over at least a week, sometimes more. Carrots and celery. Wrap them both in aluminum foil, but don't totally seal the packet. Leave little openings at the ends for moisture to escape. Otherwise, if they're totally covered up, the moisture will stay in and the veggies will rot. Carrots and celery may dry out some this way, but you can rejuvenate them in water. Just stick them in a cup, it'll be fine. They'll easily last a week, often 2 weeks or more. Okay, let's go on to cucumbers and green peppers. Pad them well so they don't bruise, and they'll last at least a week, often to 2 weeks. But once they're cut, you really need to use them all at once. For green peppers, what I find is using the little mini peppers can help because I can use a whole one of them at a time, and they'll frequently last at least 2 weeks uncut. Summer squash and zucchini. Small ones last better than larger ones. They'll often last 10 days or sometimes longer. If they're starting to wilt a bit, use them in a cooked dish instead of eating them raw. You won't notice that they're not crisp. Broccoli and cauliflower. These can both last a week or more, providing that they've never been refrigerated. For some reason, they seem to be really quick to spoil if they've ever been refrigerated and are then taken out of it. Broccoli may get a little yellow, and cauliflower may get some black spots. Just cut both of them out. And as with summer squash, if either one is starting to wilt, use it in a cooked dish and it won't be noticeable. Lettuce. My experience with lettuce is that it is so susceptible to bruising. It's just not worth trying to have it for any length of time. If you get some, eat it on provisioning day, consider it a treat, and then go on to your other vegetables. Okay, I do have a little bit more help for cruising with a small refrigerator or no refrigerator. If you want to learn about storing any food outside the refrigerator, I do have the Boat Galley Guide to Storing Food Without Refrigeration. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. It is a paid product, however. You can get a Storing Veggies cheat sheet with more tips about storing vegetables and a quick chart on how long they'll last. This is totally free, and it's in the Boat Galley resource guide. I'll put a link to that also in the show notes. Whatever you do, enjoy your great meals. Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please be sure to subscribe in your podcast app. Just search for the Boat Galley Podcast. And reviews are always appreciated. Until next time, then.